Imagine you could fight cancer with a fork. No chemo drip, no radiation machine, just one simple move. Stop feeding it. Sounds irresistible, right? You've probably heard versions of it everywhere. Cancer eats sugar. Cut carbs and you'll starve the tumor. Do fasting and the cancer will shrink. Ketones kill cancer. And then, because the internet always goes for the jugular, doctors don't want you to know this. So today we're doing something rare. We're going to keep the excitement, keep the hope, and keep the science. Because the real story of cancer and food is not a fairy tale. It's a high-stakes, fascinating metabolic chess game, and if you understand the rules, you can make smarter choices. Let's start with what's true. Cancer cells often behave like metabolic rebels. Over 100 years ago, Otto Warburg noticed something weird. Many tumor cells burn glucose in a way that looks inefficient. Even when oxygen is available, they rely heavily on a fast, glucose-hungry pathway that produces lactate, what we now call the Warburg effect. Why would cancer do that? Because inefficient isn't the same as useless. Fast glucose processing can help cancer cells generate building blocks to make new DNA, membranes, proteins, everything a rapidly dividing cell needs. It's like a city under frantic construction. You may not be energy efficient, but you're producing bricks and steel at insane speed. Reviews continue to emphasize that metabolic reprogramming is a hallmark of cancer biology. And here's a wild proof that cancers can be glucose hungry. We literally image tumors by exploiting that hunger. FDG PET scans use a radioactive glucose lookalike. Many cancers light up because they take up this tracer more than surrounding tissues. So yes, many tumors are metabolically different. Yes, many tumors take up lots of glucose. And yes, that makes the idea of starving cancer feel like it should work. But now comes the part that changes everything. Here's the first big myth buster. Myth: if I stop eating sugar, cancer won't have sugar. Your body does not work like a pantry where you just lock the cookie jar and the tumor goes hungry. Your blood glucose is tightly regulated because your brain, red blood cells, and multiple organs need it. If you eat fewer carbs, your body can make glucose from other sources, amino acids, lactate, glycerol, through processes like gluconeogenesis. So if you slash carbs aggressively, what often happens is not tumor starves, but body adapts. And in cancer patients, adaptation can come at a cost: weight loss, muscle loss, fatigue, worse tolerance of treatment. Nutrition in cancer is not cosmetic. It's clinical. Malnutrition and cachexia, a cancer-associated wasting syndrome, are linked to poorer outcomes and can limit the ability to receive effective therapy. A major European guideline set, ESPEN, emphasizes screening for malnutrition and avoiding unnecessary restriction, especially in patients losing weight. So the paradox is, trying to starve the tumor can accidentally starve the patient, and that's the one thing we know harms outcomes. Some cancers are very glucose avid, yes, but cancer cells can also use glutamine and other amino acids, fatty acids, lactate recycled from the environment, and sometimes they switch fuel sources depending on oxygen, location, and therapy pressure. Modern research keeps emphasizing that the Warburg effect is not a universal rule for every tumor at every moment. It's more nuanced and context-dependent than the memes suggest. Think of cancer metabolism like a hybrid car. If one fuel line is limited, the engine may switch to another. So if you try a single nutrient attack like cutting all carbs, you're not necessarily cornering the cancer, you may just be forcing it to reroute. Can diet change the terrain in which cancer grows and treatment works? And here the evidence is evolving and genuinely interesting. One of the most researched starve cancer ideas is fasting or fasting-mimicking diets, FMDs, structured, short, low-calorie regimens designed to create some metabolic effects of fasting while being more practical. Why would fasting help? In lab models, fasting can lower insulin and IGF-1 signaling and trigger stress resistance pathways in normal cells, potentially making cancer cells more vulnerable to therapy, while normal cells become more resilient. Reviews summarize strong preclinical signals, but emphasize clinical evidence is still developing. Now, in humans, one of the most cited trials is the DIRECT study in breast cancer, an open-label randomized trial testing an FMD alongside chemotherapy, assessing toxicity and response measures. Important takeaway: trials like DIRECT are not fasting cures cancer. They are more like, could a short dietary intervention improve tolerability or enhance treatment response signals in some contexts? And the answer so far is, there are hints, but it's not settled, and it's not for everyone. Why not? Because many patients with cancer are already at risk of malnutrition, and fasting can be dangerous in that setting, especially without careful selection and monitoring. That's why guidelines and supportive care experts stress structured nutritional assessment and individualized plans. So if you're thinking, I'll just fast aggressively during chemo, that is not a safe internet experiment. It's a conversation for your oncology team. The ketogenic diet is another viral candidate for starving cancer because it reduces carbohydrate intake and increases ketone production. The theory goes, some tumors love glucose. Ketones might be less usable for some cancer cells. Lower insulin might reduce growth signaling. Therefore, keto could slow cancer or help therapy. What does the evidence say? Recent systematic reviews and meta-analyses in cancer patients report mixed findings, some improvements in metabolic markers and body composition measures, with uncertain effects on hard cancer outcomes like survival, and with considerable variation across cancer types, settings, and study quality. There are also papers focusing specifically on feasibility/safety, suggesting keto can be tolerated in some oncology settings, but again, it's not a universal fit and should be supervised, especially if weight loss is already present. Ketogenic diets are not proven cancer cures. They may be reasonable in selected situations, ideally within clinical trials or with close clinical nutrition support, particularly because unintended weight/muscle loss can be harmful. The most starving cancer therapy is actual medicine. Here's a plot twist. Oncologists already starve cancer, just not with one magic food rule. Cancer therapy often targets the pathways cancer depends on, including metabolism. Some drugs target DNA building blocks, anti-metabolites like methotrexate or 5-FU. Others exploit specific cancer dependencies, like asparaginase in certain leukemias, which depletes an amino acid some cancer cells rely on. Newer therapies are even aimed at altered metabolic enzymes in certain tumor types. The point isn't that diet is irrelevant. The point is, metabolism is real, so real that it's a drug target. But targeted therapy works because it's precise, monitored, and adapted to a specific cancer biology, not because it's a one-size-fits-all restriction. The question most people actually mean, should I stop eating sugar? Let's answer it plainly. Will eating sugar feed cancer and make it grow overnight? No, cancer biology doesn't work like a direct pipeline from dessert to tumor growth. Is excess sugar and ultra-processed food ideal for long-term health? Also, no diet quality influences body weight, insulin resistance, inflammation, cardiovascular risk, all of which matter for cancer prevention and survivorship. Should someone with cancer totally eliminate carbohydrates? Not automatically, and sometimes it's a bad idea, especially if weight loss is happening. If your goal is to do something evidence-aligned that's actually helpful, the boring truth is powerful. Maintain adequate protein and calories during treatment if you're losing weight. Prioritize nutrient-dense foods. Address nausea, taste changes, swallowing issues, diarrhea/constipation. Keep physical activity as tolerated, including resistance exercise to protect muscle. Get professional nutrition support early if intake is dropping. That approach is very consistent with major nutrition guidance in oncology and cachexia care. If you're undergoing active cancer treatment, 1. Do not pursue extreme diets alone, especially fasting, prolonged keto, or severe restriction. 2. Protect muscle. Muscle is not just fitness, it's functional reserve. Losing it can increase fatigue and reduce treatment tolerance. Malnutrition/cachexia literature highlights how serious this is. 3. Ask for a referral to a clinical dietitian, ideally oncology nutrition. Early intervention beats emergency rescue. 4. If you're curious about fasting mimicking or keto, ask about trials. This is where these strategies can be tested with monitoring and proper selection. Trials like DIRECT exist for a reason. If you're in survivorship or risk reduction mode, 1. Aim for a sustainable pattern: whole foods, fiber, adequate protein, less ultra-processed. 2. If overweight, gradual weight reduction can be beneficial, but not crash dieting. 3. Keep activity consistent. 4. You can't starve cancer with a single trick, but you can influence the battlefield. 5. So, can you starve cancer? 6. If starve means cut sugar and cure it, the answer is no. Cancer is adaptable, the body maintains glucose, and extreme restriction can harm the patient. 7. If starve means, quote, target metabolic vulnerabilities and improve the body's terrain, then the answer becomes more interesting. Metabolism is a real target. We image it. We drug it. And short, structured dietary interventions like fasting-mimicking regimens are being studied as adjuncts to therapy, not replacements. Don't try to outsmart cancer with a diet hack. Outlast it with evidence-based treatment, strong nutrition, preserved muscle, and a plan built with your team. If you want, in the next video I can cover what should you eat during chemo, practical symptom-based strategies, fasting-mimicking diet, who might be a candidate and who should avoid it. Is keto ever reasonable in oncology, with the nuance the internet refuses to give you?